Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of PreMeducation. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about virtual interviews, the new norm for med school applications and really any application these days. I think the best way to go about this is to just give you guys 8 things that you can do to feel the most prepared for your virtual interviews. By no means is this an exhaustive list, but these are things that I did before every one of my interviews to feel the most prepared. And I definitely felt good going in, and even if I didn't feel good leaving the interview, I knew that I put in the work to do well. First up, as usual, something you should do regardless of what format the interview is in, make sure you do your research on the school. So this means using whatever research methods you want. I typically use Student Doctor Network. Students who have interviewed at that school can enter their rating of the interview, how they think they did. They even enter what questions they were asked, so I can get a really great sense of the rigor of the interview. Are they going to grill me? Is it more conversational? Things like that. And let's take 2 steps back and talk about what types of interviews there even are available. Specific to medical school, your options are as follows. So there are 3 different types of interviews that you can have, 2 of which being a more traditional style and the last one being a newer, increasingly common option. The first 2 are variations upon a similar theme. They're the regular, traditional interview where it's you having a conversation with 1 or 2 other individuals. Those individuals could be a faculty member and a student, 2 faculty members. It really depends on the school and how they approach it. But each option is either blind or open. So the blind interview is when they have 0 access to your file, they don't really know anything about you, or they have very limited access. For example, one of the schools I applied to, they asked as part of their supplementary application for me to answer 4 specific questions, and they said explicitly that if I was granted an interview, those were the only things that my interviewer would see. They would see no other part of my application aside from the answers that I put to those questions. So that's a variation on a blind interview. The other one is open. Those people have fully reviewed your file. They know everything that there is to know that you wrote down in your application, and they're going to ask you questions either about those things or really whatever they want. The third option is an MMI interview, or a multiple mini interview format. And that is when they really don't care as much about the things that are written on your application. It's more of a situations-based approach. So you'll have anywhere between 4 to 10 different scenarios given to you by different members of the faculty and staff at that school. They'll ask you a question, you'll get a minute or 2 to think about your response, and then about 2 minutes or so to give an answer. Oftentimes those answers can flow into conversation, or that's simply it. But you can get anything really, from questions about healthcare in America to how would you handle a certain situation. One of the questions I was asked was specific to what's an organization I would donate to versus one that I wouldn't donate to and why. So the options are really endless. Anyways, regardless of the interview format, you definitely want to make sure you do your research on the school. Read their mission statement through and through, browse their website, get a sense for what kind of questions they might ask you, and make sure that you're fully comfortable answering any question that they might throw at you. As you're looking over the school's website, that's a great opportunity for you to start to gather questions that you might want to ask at the end of your interview. Don't forget to ask questions. The worst thing you can do for yourself is not have questions at the end. So start to gather those very early in your preparation process. Really think hard about those questions and make them unique to the school. Don't just ask, what's the culture like? Or can you tell me about your curriculum? If those answers can be found on their website, don't ask during the interview. Tip number 2 is to review your own application and all of your supplemental materials. Make sure you're walking in knowing exactly what you wrote down and you're comfortable talking about every single thing on your application. The last thing you want to do is walk in and have them ask a specific question about a research project you did maybe 1 or 2 years ago. If you don't know the answer to those things, you're going to look unprepared. So make sure to brush up on every little thing that you did and have at least 1 or 2 talking points for each one of your experiences so that you look like you're well prepared. My third piece of advice, and one of the most influential pieces of advice I got throughout my interview process, it's to write down your big 3. And what is the big 3? I can tell you. Your big 3 are the 3 things that you want your interviewers to leave their conversation with you knowing about you. For example, someone who has a unique application centered around a lot of research opportunities, but they also come from an underrepresented background and they have an increased interest in wanting to help the underserved, specifically people from backgrounds like themselves. Those 3 things that should be highlighted already throughout their application can be the 3 pillars of their interview. So for each of the talking points or each of the questions that they're asked, they can make sure to highlight one of those 3 things, just to make sure that when that interviewer leaves and they go to summarize their conversation with the rest of the interview committee, they can say, XYZ student is phenomenal. They've had incredible research opportunities doing X, Y, and Z. They come from an underrepresented minority background, and they think that that unique experience will set them up for success in helping the underserved communities like the ones that they came from. So make sure to have your big 3 written down and in mind before your interview, and try to reflect throughout your experiences in preparation to make sure that those 3 things are going to come across in the answers that you give. Tip number 4 is to do a ton of mock interviews. These can be with anybody from coworkers at your job to a family friend or your parent, or try to utilize some of the resources that you have around you. There are a lot of companies such as MedSchoolCoach who offer mock interviews, and they can give you great feedback on your answers, your outfit, your location, all those things, and really help you nail the interview when it comes time. A big benefit these days is that a lot of your mock interviews are going to be held virtually anyways, so you can record them if you're hosting them on Zoom and go back and watch yourself. For me, I noticed that after every question, I always was saying, "Oh, that's a great question." My mock interviewer would ask, "Tell me about yourself." And my immediate response was, "Great question. Yeah, absolutely." And then I would go on to give my answer. In hindsight, I realized that was really silly, and I made sure not to do those things on my actual interview day. I also have a really bad habit of talking with my hands, if you haven't noticed already, and so I have to make sure to tone it down when I'm in an interview setting, make sure that I'm not really flailing my hands in front of the camera. Tip number 5 is to get an inside scoop on the school by emailing a student or faculty member ahead of time. I would advise finding a student on LinkedIn or Facebook, or using any connections that you have to the schools that you're applying to email a student ahead of time. Set up a quick 15-minute call with them, ask them any question that you want. I have found that students are always the most flexible and the most honest when it comes to their schools, more so than a faculty member. Tip number 6 is to pick your location ahead of time and be strategic. I am at my house right now, which I've only done a couple of interviews here. I much prefer to do them at my office. And not because my office is spectacular or anything like that. I share a small office with 2 other people. However, in my office, I have a really big poster that lays out the program that I've been working on for the past 3+ years. And it's not super obnoxious, but it leans right up against the wall. And I always strategically position it just to my right so that you definitely know it's there. And I'm talking about things, and as people ask about one of my research experiences, if they ask about that, I can always say, "Oh yeah, this is the program that you asked about." And it really helps people think, okay, great. Not only is she talking about it, but she has tangible evidence. It's real enough for her to have a poster about it behind her. And those things just help. It's nice decor. But for other students who maybe don't have a specific poster to use, you can always position small things that might boost the appeal or look of your location, or maybe give you a talking point to bring up later. Tip number 7 is to pick your outfit ahead of time, and you can be strategic with this as well. Let's get some examples. This is my favorite interview sweater. I love it because it adds a pop of color, and the stripes are there, but not too obnoxious compared to the rest of the group. It helps me stand out in a room full of more traditional blazers and shirts. This is that more traditional route. For those of you who like something like this, you can do this super easily. I'm wearing a $6 top from online. It's a mock neck long sleeve with a blazer I got from Goodwill, and you'd never know the difference. It's also a crop top, and I'm easily hiding that with the jacket. Here is a variation on the same theme. This one I like a little bit more than the gray because the white and black contrast a little bit better. You see me again there hiding the fact that it's a crop top, and I always make sure to add a statement necklace to finish out the look. When I'm sitting, I could leave the jacket open and you wouldn't even know it's a crop top. If I'm standing like this, I try to button it. But there you go. Last but not least, tip number 8 is to get a good night's sleep and make sure you eat breakfast in the morning. When you go to sleep, make sure you get your full 7 or 8 hours. Set an alarm for the morning. Take your time getting ready. Review any of your relevant talking points. Make sure you're confident in your big 3 and make sure to eat. Emphasize your breakfast. Front load on your meals for the day so that you can eat light throughout the rest of the day and maximize all of the time that you have during your interview day. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck on any of the virtual interviews that you have, whether they're for med school or otherwise. These tips really work for all of them. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.